redundant, but we're a nonprofit totally that was put in place to provide extracurricular activities for children with special needs and support for their families, and that has grown and merged into lots of different things in the 6 years we've been around. But we currently offer football, soccer, theater, dance, cheerleading, art, and football programs here in Central Arkansas for kids, all different diagnoses. And we have kids with a lot of kids on the autism spectrum, but we have cerebral palsy and Down syndrome and spina bifida and ADHD and seizure disorder and Tourette's and you name it. Our goal, we don't really turn anybody away. We say that if a child, whatever it is they have going on mentally or physically, would prevent them from playing a city league sports program or like a for-profit dance class in a local studio, we want to be a place for them. Our Autism Resource Center started, I guess, 4 years ago when a lot of families were getting that autism diagnosis and were calling us, asking what resources were in the area, what was around, and didn't really know what to do next. And so we formed an advisory board of parties that were interested or informed in working with autism spectrum disorders. We have some occupational therapists and parents. Betsy Hendricks, who is a biomedical doctor who works out of Quitman. Don Stahlberg, who works with autism programs at Easter Seals. We kind of have a myriad of individuals. And every year we kind of survey parents and find out what is it that we can do to best serve families that have children on the spectrum. And we kind of have 5 focuses within our Autism Resource Center of Arkansas, because everything else we do is pretty just extracurricular. But we do monthly educational meetings, which is what this is about today. We have a parents resource guide. It's on our website. It's helpful information both for the newly diagnosed and or people who are new to the state or new to the area. We do a summer camp. We have a young adults with autism group that meets once a month. That's been a very, very popular new program we've offered. It's our first thing that we've done outside of just pediatrics. And then we have a resource library, and the link with all of our books is online, and it actually is housed in the house across the street where Community Connections is located. But this is our educational meeting. We have found really in 2012, this was the first year that we saw that a lot of the speakers that we have are helpful to more than just families with children on the autism spectrum. And so we've opened them up to everybody else. And funding sources is something we survey at our January meeting for what parents want to hear about, what they need to know. And usually schools and interacting with the schools is always one of the top of the list. I mean, there's some kind of top hitters, and funding sources is one that was, I think, ranked 4 or 5 this year of something that families wanted to know about once they have a child that's on spectrum. You know, what is SSI, Medicaid, TEFRA, what are they, what do I need to do to apply? So that's what this is about today. We just pick a topic, so that's what March is. So our goal was we were going to try to find somebody from the different entities to speak on SSI, Medicaid, TEFRA, waiver, you know, everything that we needed to know. This is a very, very busy season we have found. There are lots of conflicts. Like actually my son is playing our special needs soccer league right now, so if I duck out and come back, it's because I have a husband texting and saying, you're missing it. But I'm really, really glad Rodney's here. He has come before. He's spoken on IEPs to our group. He's kind of a wealth of information. I'm going to let you give your own bio of resources. He's had, 25 years, also with your son, of experience, 30 years of experience. But I will tell you that I went with the president of our Parent Advisory Council, her name's Gina Moore, to the SSI office. Their funding was cut, and so they cannot send anyone to any trainings that are not Monday through Friday. So we went and were trained, so I'm going to have to train you on SSI, so good luck with that. But I will speak to that shortly. But from there, I always like everybody to introduce themselves and we could start, because so you know who you're talking to, kind of why you're here, what brought you, that kind of thing. I have 3 little boys and 1 on the way in October. That will be it. It's crazy. But our second in line is 4-year-old, and he is not diagnosed, but he's been in therapy since 7 months old. He's just global developmental delays. ADHD's presented itself. He has a lot of those tendencies, but just was very low tone, and you know, has made a lot of progress, but he's still in OT, PT, and speech 5 days a week. And so he was what brought me into this world. So I always want to learn what I can learn, and I'll share that it's like a totally different world. Like I hear about school services, but he was able to start kindergarten this year, and we're not going to have him start this year. Going into next year, I feel like, have I not paid attention over the past 3 years I've worked here? Because when it's your own child, I'm like, oh my gosh, you started school, I don't know what to do. But I'm just right here with you. But I also work with Community Connections. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Okay. My name is Lisa. My husband Eric, and we're here because we have a 3-year-old grandchild who lives with us, and she displays a lot of the classic signs of autism, and we're waiting for an evaluation at Dennis Developmental right now. And her mother lives in Texas, so she gets to see her about every other month, and so we're just learning, starting over with a second family.
And you live in Sherwood.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Stacy, and my husband Brian and I live in Maumelle. We have our son Josh, who's over there probably not playing somewhere, but tracing the letters on the field. That's his favorite thing to do. We, like you all, do not have an official diagnosis. He's been seen at the Dennis Developmental Center, and he was at such a young age that his behaviors were still somewhat, on key with kids his same age, but he was scripting and doing really, unique things like saying alphabets backwards, and I said, okay, something's going on here. So we're waiting, actually, like you, to go back and have a diagnosis. And I've dabbled in a little bit of this, but there are probably still some things that I need to know, and so I'm here to really learn and make sure I'm not missing anything, because for some reason you feel like I have this small window to get all this stuff done. If I miss something, then I'm going to be waiting forever, that kind of thing. So that's why I'm here.
Hi, my name's Warren. I've got a 5-year-old. She doesn't have autism, but she had a stroke in the womb, and so she gets physical therapy, speech therapy, and occupational therapy, and goes to the Center for Early Learning on the other side. And so I'm one of those that's been coming since you sort of broadened it a little bit to the non-autism, because like the education one last month applies to us and everyone. And we are on TEFRA already, but there's other stuff down the road that I definitely want to learn about.
And I'm Becca Connor. I work with Courtney at Community Connections as through the AmeriCorps Vista program, and work directly with the Autism Resource Center and then our other programs and anything else. So I get to come and absorb all this information and whatnot. So I enjoy it.
Okay, and as Courtney said, my name is Rodney Farley. And I work for the Title V Children's Special Health Care Needs Program.
Sorry, we're watching kids out the window.
But it's a section of DDS Children's Services. So if you look at the chart of DHS, we're under DDS Children's Services, but we're actually the Title V Children's Special Health Care Needs Program. We used to be called CMS, and then because we used to be under Medicaid until about 7 years ago. But I brought a handout that says Title V on it, and I didn't. It's a PowerPoint, so we're just gonna. If you want to kind of read over it fast, there's a few things that I'm going to talk about on it. And let me say this real quick. As Courtney said, I have a son that's born with spina bifida, and he's 30 years old. So I have been doing this for quite a long time, and there's not a lot of things that's changed. Yesterday I was on Facebook and I was looking at some friends of mine that I know all over the United States from working with Family Voices, which is a national grassroots advocacy organization. And there was a video that this mom posted on there from Atlanta, Georgia. It just happened Thursday night, and it was her son's choir. And the choir's all standing over here, and he's in a wheelchair standing about 10 foot away. And gosh, when I seen that, it just made me so mad. And I sent that mom, she's not my friend, but I seen who the picture came from, and I sent her an sent her a message through Facebook telling her to don't stop, keep pushing it, and for all the other kids that, that I experienced the same stuff, 25 and 20 years ago with my own son. So, when you're in those school meetings, make sure that your child's included when you're in the IEP, because as Courtney was saying, that's really good that they have a lot of those programs here now as far as the recreation and the social activities, because they didn't have those kind of things. We got together as parents, and went and got stuff donated from McDonald's, and one got something donated from the pizza place, and the YMCA gave us the gym, and we did different programs, and we called it Super Spokes. But it was all volunteers, and so we did that for kids. And I remember that always stuck out in my mind is there was a family from North Louisiana that would drive all the way to North Little Rock once a month just for their daughter to participate in that. She was she had a spinal cord injury from an automobile accident. So there's a need out there, and it's really good to see that that a lot of the larger cities like Little Rock now has a therapeutic recreation department. And if you go to big cities like Dallas and Atlanta and places like that, they've had those things for years. But in the last 10 years, we really started to see those things pop up. A lot more churches are doing outreach to families with kids with special needs, as far as night out for the families, and like respite and different things like that. So it's kind of hard to keep up with all that. I wish there was like in Houston, Texas, which is a very large city, I saw an actual faith-based resource directory that had all the churches from all the different denominations, and it was very large. But Houston's a very large city that had all these different programs as far as like respite and therapeutic recreation type things. So maybe someday they'll have one of those things around here. I haven't actually seen one, but it's kind of hard because you'll hear that this one church is doing this, another church is doing this, but kind of getting it all together. So anyway, back to the story about the little boy in the wheelchair that's sat in quite a bit of distance from his family. The Today Show has picked that up, and they're fixing to do an interview with them on that. So that's cool that got recognized about that. So just keep that in mind, that when you are at those IEP meetings, that your kids are included with the other non-disabled kids in different activities. Because my son used crutches until he got up to the 7th grade, and then it was just too much for him from changing classroom to classroom. A lot of times when they did field trips, if I didn't take off work and go, he didn't get to go. And so that's wrong. So you need to make sure you document all that kind of stuff, not in verbal language to your principal, but in writing, in your IEP for the families that have children that are fixing to start in the public school system. And from my experience raising my son, the education system and the healthcare systems are the two biggest things that you have to learn about. And once they came in there and told me, you have a son, and I felt 10 feet tall, and they said, but he has a myelomengicell, and I didn't know what the heck that was. But and then once I said I want to see him, then I knew that he was going to have lots of health problems and things like that. And I never knew that I'd be coming on Saturdays talking to other families, or going to Washington, D.C. and going through the Hart Building, talking to senators, or going to the House of Representatives, or any of those things, or involved. Now I'm involved with teaching pediatric residents at Children's Hospital and UAMS, sitting on different boards for the Disability Rights Center. I'm a commissioner for the Governor's Commission on People with Disabilities, and have been involved in lots of different things. I've been involved with our Parent Advisory Council for our Title V program for 22 years, and I've missed one meeting in 22 years. So you have to get involved in a lot of that stuff, and for the folks that's here, the grandparents, I'm glad that y'all are here, because the more knowledge is pretty powerful, and the more that you can learn from other families, because we have some like resource directories here, and if you don't know which number to call, you're just kind of playing phone tag, calling all around to all those places. So it's good to connect with other parents. There was a group up in Springdale that was just specifically for grandparents that were raising their grandchildren with special needs. It's probably on the back of this newsletter, and I don't know if you can, Bridging the Gap, Grandparents as Parents. There's some numbers there at the Jones Center, so might want to call them sometime and see what you can find out, because they could probably tell you more, because I really believe that the best kind of speaker and the best kind of knowledge you can get is actually from somebody who's walked in those shoes that you're walking in. Because there's different things that how you apply for services if you don't have guardianship and all those kind of things for the child that affects grandparents that doesn't, that it's available for the parents. So that might be a good resource for y'all. I don't know of any places around here that has some meetings. I think they used to do some at Children's Hospital, but the only thing is the different groups, they kind of come and go. They come, there's large groups that come and attend, and then people kind of get beat down because not very many people come. They say, oh, well, we're not going to meet next month, and then, all those kind of things. So I've been involved in, that's kind of one of the things that's part of my job duty, is to help people get support groups started all over the state. And I go all over the state, and I go all out of the state. And I'll toot my horn a little bit. This past February, I received the Dr. Morrow McPherson Family Leadership Award in Washington, D.C. And so that was a pretty cool thing, to be nominated in the country and have that and go there and receive the award. Dr. Morrow McPherson she started the International Congress for People with Disabilities, and they went to all these different countries. And I actually got to go to Canada many years ago. And it was kind of interesting to go there and see, how people are. And you see a wheelchair that they sell for $200 that cost you $2,000 here, but then their income there may only be a couple of dollars a month. So it's just very different. And there were interpreters there because people spoke Spanish, they spoke French, and so whoever was doing the presentation, you had to wear the earphones to hear the interpretation. And she started that, and she used to be head of the Maternal Child Health Bureau, Children with Special Health Care Needs, for many, many years. And she's actually from Canada and came here to live in the United States, and she has a practice. Now that she's retired from that, she does some volunteer type pediatrician work around the DC and Rockville, Maryland area. So it's been a pretty long journey in all this, and I know some things about Social Security, and then there's some things I don't. I never could figure out how they determine how much you get. That is very hard.
Is that what you're going to tell us, Courtney?
I'm going to tell you what I learned.
And if Courtney got it, then good for her, because I sat there at their offices many times. Because my son used to receive Social Security because I was a single dad raising him. And also he was on the TEFRA program too. Back then, the TEFRA program, you didn't have to pay a premium to participate in it. All that started probably, probably about 7 years ago too. And they just looked at, basically what happened is they looked at a lot of people that had high income that was kind of getting what they considered a free service. And so they started making people pay premiums to participate in that. And so, in which it's a sliding scale based on that. But used to, they just looked at the child's diagnosis, and that's how you received TEFRA, and then they had to change it. So there was lots of different activity that went on at the Capitol. I don't know if you were working over there then, Warren, or not, but they had people camping out up at the Capitol and lots of rallies trying to protect TEFRA and different things like that. So but basically the state just that's one of the first times I ever saw the state. I've been working for the state for 18 years, and that was one of the first times I ever saw them have meetings where parents were involved in it, in the meeting process. And basically it was just put to them, we're going to charge a premium or we're going to do away with it totally. So it is a good thing, because some families have to decide if they have private insurance, if their private insurance is going to benefit them enough for their child to get all their therapies, or do they need to go with the premium for the TEFRA program. And usually the Medicaid program for children is better than any insurance I've seen in the state. So that's why lots of, and then some people kind of get angry because they're having money taken out of their check that's paying for their family's premium private insurance, and they're having to pay double too for that. So they just kind of have to weigh that out and see which is best for them on that type of situation. So since we were going to talk about finances and different things like that, and since I work for the Title V, I thought I'd bring like this little PowerPoint thing, and I didn't want to bring it because I thought there might be different speakers here and I didn't know how long we had. So some of the things I talked about there, it has the 1-800 number there. If you want to call, you can call, and you can tell them what county you live in and that you want to speak to the nurse or social worker, because in some of our county offices we have social workers, and in other county offices we have nurses. This tells you, the second slide there just talks about, as I mentioned, we used to be called Children's Medical Services, and we got moved in 2002 from the Division of Medical Services, which Medicaid's at, to under the Developmental Disability Services, and then under that we actually went under Children's Services. It's a federal program. It's one of the oldest federal programs around. In some states, they still have the politically incorrect language that says Program for Crippled Children, because this program was started because of the polio epidemic in the country, and that's why it's changed its name to Children with Special Health Care Needs. So the definition of children with special health care needs is listed there in that third slide. When we talk about children's services, DDS children's services, the top slide on page 2 tells you all the different kinds of programs that's through that. There's one of the things that I want to mention here is because if you look under early intervention, it says DDS special needs. There is a DDS special needs fund. It's like a kind of a one-time thing. It's like, for some reason, it's a real odd number. It can't be like $1,000. It's like $999. So that is for families who may need some type of respite services, some type of equipment that are not on the home and community-based waiver, could apply for the DDS special needs funds. It's one of those kind of things. It's kind of a excuse me. The pollen in the air has really got me messed up today. It's one of those kind of best kept secrets. They don't tell a lot of people, and the families that do find out about it, they call, and what happens is they kind of create this list, so you're kind of like on a waiting list for it. But when funding time comes around, which you know state funding starts July 1 of every year and it ends June 30th of every year. So that's kind of the cycle that you need to look at, so you'll know that they'll be getting new funding July 1. A lot of times, this is what I'll tell you as from a parent speaking to another parent, is be assertive and be persistent. And if they tell you no, don't take no for an answer. You call back and you let them know that you're getting new funding July 1. Is there going to be money available then? Can I put my application in? Be considered on a list or something for when the new funding cycle starts. The other thing is the DDS integrated supports. This money is basically used, it's kind of like an emergency fund kind of thing, like a situation where, and I think maybe a lot of grandparents might fall under that. I don't really know for sure, but it's kind of that emergency fund where if something happened to the family and there was a special needs child in there, those funds would help take care of that child, because that actually provides some of the same services that waiver does, but it's very limited amount of money because it's actual state dollars, it's not federal dollars. And the waiver funding comes from like a match of state and federal dollars, but the integrated support funds is only state dollars, and they use it for like emergency situations, like I said, where an adult with a developmental disability or a child where there was like an emergency situation where somebody had to step in kind of like immediately. Then there's the famous DDS home and community-based waiver, which there's a waiting list for. My suggestion is for the younger families and for any families that you know that come in contact. I don't really understand why when you transition out of the EI program, and when I say EI, I'm talking about early intervention. That's the birth to 3 program, and that's the other program that's in DDS Children's Services. And I've told some of the hierarchy people there, you know, why don't you sign these families up when they transition for the home and community-based waiver? Because if that child has a diagnosis of autism, chances are they're going to need that service. If that child has a diagnosis of cerebral palsy or Down syndrome or any of the other categories that would that they would fall under a developmental disability definition, they're going to be eligible for that program. So if the waiting list is 5 to 7 years, why not put them on there when they're 3 years old? They won't do that unless you specifically ask. It's another one of those things you have to ask. I have a nephew that was a twin that was born with Down syndrome, and I went to that meeting and I asked the EI person that we wanted to fill that out. And he says, well, it's in the trunk of my car, and he was trying to wrap everything up, and I says, no, we want the application, we want it filled out today. So I had to be kind of persistent. My sister didn't have a clue, and so he is on waiver, and he's only 10 years old, and he didn't have to wait very many years. But several years back, there was a lawsuit, and they had to put lots of people on one time. And so if you are on the waiver waiting list, you need to call, and it's a child, you need to call the DDS service person, which would be for children, which is the Title V program, and ask that nurse or social worker what number your child is. And I don't know about y'all, but you know, everybody uses a smartphone, and I have one and all that kind of stuff, but I don't never use the calendar stuff on it, but I always carry like a little 12-month calendar. You should write on that calendar like every 3 months or every 4 months or twice a year, and call and ask, what's my child's number, to see where they're moving up. There's been, they kind of do flat funding every biennial, I can't even talk today either, for those kind of services, and I think like in a 2-year period, it's something like only 240 people that they have funds for, but supposedly, in which is kind of law, people that are in a human development center or an ICFMR or somebody who's like at the Arkansas State Hospital, they have priority before anybody else, because there is people, children that, you've probably seen it on the news, there is children at the Arkansas State Hospital that are waiting to be on the home and community-based waiver. So without the legislature putting any more funding into that, and believe me, they ask, but you know that state legislators decide on what divisions, you know, that how much money they get. So it's been one of those kind of things. It's nothing new. It's been on for years, but there's probably about 1,000 people in the human development centers, and there's probably like 3,500 people on the home and community-based waiver program. You've probably seen that there's lots of different groups out there. The Arkansas Waiver Association, they have a conference every year in Hot Springs. They've been really advocating, and they did an interim study with the legislature trying to get more funding into that waiver program. Also, I saw Warren at a meeting that was at DHS where they're looking at how people on waiver receive their services. So in the next several months, maybe 6 months to the first of the year, there's probably going to be, not probably, there is going to be some changes in how waiver services work. So Moving on to the next slide, it talks more about the Title V children with special health care needs. They provide that for children without Medicaid and for children with Medicaid. And basically the Title V program is kind of that safety net. It was designed to be kind of a safety net to kind of catch those kids that fall through the cracks. So it tells about, in that second slide there, it talks about the different bullet points about children with Medicaid, what you can get, and children without Medicaid. With the children with Medicaid down there, you'll see family support and respite. I wanted to point this out because that's another funding source that's really not advertised a lot. You're eligible for that. You just have to put an application in. If you're on TEFRA now, it's kind of tricky if you're on TEFRA. If your TEFRA premium is more than $50 a month, you're not eligible for it. But if your TEFRA premium is under $50 a month, then you're eligible for that respite funds there. And it's like $1,000, and you have to show your receipts and what you spent that $1,000 on. So it's really not a very hard thing. You hear some crazy stuff that people are trying to put a 30-pack of beer on their receipt and turn it in, and that's their respite. So you can't use it for that kind of stuff, but you could use it for like if you have a caregiver, for them to write you a receipt. If you and your husband wanted to get away for the weekend, you know, you can have, it just can't be paid to like, you're not supposed to be paid to like your husband. It can be paid to like a grandmother or aunt or uncle or any family member except like the immediate family, which would be the spouse or the husband. So I wanted to mention that since this is basically about funding services. Yes?
Can I just pause you right there if I missed it? So for somebody that would want to apply for either one of the things you talked about in the slides, you know, some of the special equipment does not cover a waiver. Are the applications online somewhere, or do you call a certain number?
You would call, if you lived here in Faulkner County, you would contact Brenda Squires at the Faulkner County DHS.
Yep.
If you lived in another county, and gosh, you would think I would know that, but they changed those people around so much. Sometimes the people that are actually in that county are working somebody in South Arkansas. So just call that 1-800 number that's on that very front slide and just tell them what county you're in, and they can connect you with the social worker or nurse for that area. But let me back up a minute because it's something you said, Courtney. If you're on waiver already, the home and community-based waiver, you're not eligible for either.
But for someone who's not.
For somebody who's not.
Right.
Because you can get respite services through the
Yes.
home and community-based waiver, and you can also get equipment through there. They changed it up now here. Oh gosh, I'll keep wanting to say last month, but it's actually been probably a year or so ago. They changed it up on the equipment and stuff you can get. It has to be kind of specifically designed for that person. So that kind of knocks some of the things out that they used to get. So basically, if you're requesting those kind of things and they deny it, you might have to appeal it. But all these things has appeal processes.
Is I'm sorry. Is the family support respite, is that a one-time?
It's usually a one-time thing. The reason why is because it's very limited money. I think, I'm thinking it's only like $250,000 or $300,000. So if you look at $1,000 a family, then that's not, reaching out to very many. One of the things that our advisory council did many years ago, it actually back then, Governor Beebe was a senator, is some of the families had talked to their senator and they had a respite bill on the legislature floor. And I still have that bill, and I wish it would have passed. But basically what they decided is that the DHS director at the time and the Medicaid director at the time asked for the bill to be pulled, and I don't really know why, because if they would have let it went through, there would have been matching dollars, you know, the 3-to-1 match. Because for every state dollars right now, the federal government puts up $3 for every state dollar in Arkansas. And so it would have been a lot more money that would have served a lot more people. Some of the things that they're talking about with this new waiver is trying to change some of the stuff to give people more options for family support kind of things. I think, you know, this is my opinion. I think a lot of families that want to be on the home and community-based waiver, it gives them an opportunity for that caregiver to be there, possibly at the school with the child, or after school, or sometimes before school. So it gives that family an opportunity to continue to work in their employment. Because if you notice, a lot of families that have kids with special needs, sometimes it's the dad or sometimes it's the mom. They have to like give up their career or their job because some of these kids take a lot of care at home, and usually whoever makes the most money in the family is the one who continues to work. So then on the next slide down there, the very last one, it talks about where you can make an application at any Department of Human Services. And again, when you go in there, you have to ask that you want the DDS Children's Services application, you know, for Title V. And don't let them tell you no, because sometimes they're going to probably say, we don't have that. Because, you know, we used to hear that all the time. A family would go into a DHS office and they would go up to the window there or to the person at the phone and say, I need a TEFRA application. And they say, we never heard of that before. Because when you left Social Security office, when Social Security said you made too much money to get that, because that's at Social Security office, they didn't tell you to go down to the DHS office and apply for TEFRA. And there was always that big thing that went on too. But Children's Hospital can make an application anywhere that there's a Title V community-based offices. So there is one in Conway at the Faulkner County Hospital, a hospital social worker. But it's just like everything else. The applications have to be renewed each year. And then on page 3, that slide just talks about financial eligibility. It's based on finances, so you could possibly get the service completely paid for, or you could get the service would be like on a sliding scale where you paid a certain portion of that. Way back when my son was younger, Medicaid didn't pay for wheelchairs. They didn't pay for orthopedic bracing. So I'd have to go you're talking about having to go here and there and here and there. To get a wheelchair, I'd have to go to the Arkansas Spinal Cord Commission. To get braces, I'd have to go to the Title V Children with Special Health Care Needs program. But then the therapies and all the other stuff was paid for by Medicaid. So it's a lot better than it used to be, but that's just kind of how you have to go to all these different doors, knock on all these different doors to get the kind of service you need. If they look at age criteria, sometimes we used to go up to age 21, but that was in years where there was a good year and there was funding. The federal government who funds the Maternal Child Health Title V block grant, it's been pretty much flat funding for several years. But the second slide talks about that, and as of tomorrow, April 1st, because this was updated, I updated this before I came, and since today's the last day of March, a family of 4 can have a gross monthly income up to $4,803 a month to be eligible for Title V coverage. So you have it right there, the brand new statistics, because that changes every April, the FPL, federal poverty level. So you can put that, that's good until April 1st of 2013.
So the age criteria, excuse me.
Oh yes, on the age criteria, I'm sorry, I got a little too fast for myself there. The age criteria is birth to age 18. We used to go to age 21, and sometimes they may do that, but it's going to be if they have some extra service money to spend. Because if this is kind of funny, It's not really kind of funny, but this is kind of how it works. And it's not just with this program, but it's with all state funded programs. Depending on how, they have to watch their budgets because we're in a balanced budget state. That's why we're not in trouble like all these other states that are in the red. And basically the law says that like the DDS director, Charlie Green, or whether it's the Medicaid director, any of those people could be arrested if they go over in their budget. So sometimes they're kind of holding money back, so to speak. And then when it gets close to that end of the year, like now that there's only 3 months left in this state fiscal year, and they'll really start spending, or a lot of kids will start going on waiver. So that's kind of something to do, because sometimes when I talked about that 240 slots, they have to have some of those for emergency type situations where they're court ordered for kids in foster care that have special health care needs, and they say, that this child has to be put on, and they have to have a slot to put that child on. So sometimes at the end of the year, the end of the state fiscal year, you'll see things start happening a little more faster because they'll start trying to spend that money up. Because it really looks bad if you have money left over in your budget and then you're already asking the legislature for more money. They're like, well, you didn't spend all your money last year. You could take a 25% cut. That's just how government stuff works. So anyway.
And I just want to make sure, because I feel like I'm the slowest one here. This eligibility from the second slide is what we're talking about for the grants you talked about here. This is not TEFRA, not Medicaid, or anything. No. It's just for the Title V extra grant money, the respite care, or the, here's our other kind.
Okay, and then the medical eligibility for the program, see up there at that top slide it says financial medical age resident. So anyway, the last one there talks about the medical eligibility to receive that program. Then it talks on the top slide on page 4 talks about what actually the Title V services can pay for. Then it talks about the age eligibility that the question was about earlier. And it's from birth to age 18. And then it says that sometimes they do age 18 to 21 on years that funding allows. Another eligibility is to be a resident of Arkansas. If you're not a U.S. citizen, this is the only program. If you're not a U.S. citizen, you can't receive Medicaid unless sometimes the family's not a citizen, but the child's born here, and the child that's born here is eligible, but the family may not be. But the Title V program is the only program that will, if a child has lived in the United States for 12 months and they can prove that, even though they're not a U.S. citizen, Title V has to help pay for those services.
Can I ask a question, Chief? For diagnosis evaluations, covered conditions, is there a list? You may have covered that before.
Well, that list is really kind of long. And again, with that, you would just need to contact that 1-800 number. And if you have a specific, but see, basically what they try to do is those nurses and social workers, if you call them, then they're going to be trying to get you help with applying for Social Security or with TEFRA or all those other kind of things. And since a lot of people like to, this is one of the things that I'm going to say right now, since it just crossed my mind too, is if you get a waiver application, those are very kind of hard to fill out. And most people just bring them home and chuck them on their bar or chuck them on their living room table, and they just stay there. They can help you fill this out. The Title V nurses or social workers can help you fill that out. So you can call them, make an appointment with them, and you can go down there and you can have them help you fill that out. And I think that's probably a pretty good idea, because you want that to be filled out as much as possible so that when it's submitted, they're not sending it back to you, or they're not telling you there's not enough documentation from the physician there, or the physician forgot to sign it, any of those kind of scenarios that could take place. and they can look over it before you even submit it. And once it's submitted, then they'll send you a letter either telling you you're eligible, and if you're eligible, then you'll be issued a number. You'll be getting a letter that says you're number 2000 or you're number 1500 and something. And that's the number that when I said call them every 3 or 4 months, call them and see. If you move, you got to call them and change your address, because if you lived in Conway and you decide you're going to move in Little Rock, and you do the forwarding address thing, it only lasts for 6 weeks. They happen to send that to the Conway address and it comes back to them, guess what? You just got kicked out. And people don't know that either. So if you move, you got to call them, and there's actually a form you fill out with the change of address on it. Okay, on page 5, this just talks about our Parent Advisory Council. They've been around like for 22 years. They meet 4 times a year. They just kind of have different speakers come. They also look at the Title V programs, make suggestions on their kind of stuff. There's different members of these. These members are from all over the state of Arkansas. Some of them have support groups on a monthly basis. Some don't have a support group meeting or training until like once a year. So those are the information there about the Advisory Council. The middle slide there talks about the home and community-based waiver. It's already said that about that they can take the application. Now, if it's somebody who's already graduated from school, you'll have to go to DDS Adult Services to get help with that stuff. But if they're still in school, and even if they're 21 or 22 and they're still in school, then you can get help from them in filling out that waiver. And I talked about the integrated support services. That last slide there tells you more about that, and then you'll see that first bullet point. It said for emergency situations. I guess I got a little too fast here and was telling y'all about things before I even got to the slide. But it also says funding is not guaranteed beyond 90 days. So see, that goes back to that emergency kind of thing. It might be where they do provide funding, but no longer than 90 days. Then the last slide there talks about the DDS Special Needs Fund. That it is a one-time assistance thing. It's limited funding of that $999. You have to get a children's services caseworker to help you fill out the application packet. And then it says it's limited in dollar amount of service. It used to just be like that $999, but they may now, which I guess I should have asked that because I don't work with those applications. When it says limited in dollar amount, I don't know if that means the $999 or if you're just saying that you need it because you have to go to see your grandmother's funeral in Wisconsin and you just need somebody for the weekend. It might be limited to $250 or something like that. I really don't know. But again, you can call that 1-800 number, and that 1-800 number will put you at the office in downtown Little Rock at 7th and Main. And you can just ask that switchboard person, tell them what county you live in, or pretty much all these supervisors are what we would call the head honcho kind of people. They're all in that office down there at 7th and Main, downtown Little Rock. So is there any other questions about anybody might have about this?
I have one question, is just a point of clarification. You mentioned if you're on TEFRA and your premium is more than $50, then you're not eligible for the family support respite.
Right.
But that doesn't exclude you from any other Title V services?
No.
So just that one piece?
Yeah, just that one piece.
Okay. And then one other one. The applications that you said you have to complete every year, do they send you notification about that? Do you just have to?
Yeah, they're supposed to.
Okay, and TEFRA
once you
same way?
No, TEFRA, Well, I don't know about TEFRA. See, we used to handle TEFRA years and years ago when we were under the Division of Medical Services, but that's all handled under the Division of Medical Services, which is Medicaid. And it's unbelievable how many people retire. I mean, every week there's a thing in the elevator that says Miss So-and-so's retired. But really, it is. It's like if you ever walk down through there, it's that way a lot in state government, because most of the people when they got to work there, they stayed there for their 30 or 28 years, and it's a pretty aging group of folks.
And they're retiring with a wealth of knowledge.
I can tell you from TEFRA experience, they will randomly send you a renewal form with a notice that says if you don't send us it back within 7 days, your services will be cut off,
And
or 10
I will
days.
speak from personal experience, that is a very bad thing. So if you get anything from them, ours relapsed because we missed it by like a day, and it was a bit of a to-do. We were very panicked because his OT and PT wasn't being covered. Yes.
But it will not be necessarily on a yearly basis. It will be 9 months this time and 18 months the next time.
Check your mail.
Check your mail, but it's the same. I save all mine because I literally just go back and rewrite, and that some things change, but it's just, that's the easiest way to do it. And even the doctor has you fill out the form, the renewal form, and have to take it in there for him to sign. And so if you save all that and do it, it's pretty easy if you do that, but you just never know when it's going to come. And like even on the premiums, they ask for your taxes. Well, they ask like if they do it in 9 months, it's still the same tax you filed last time, so you turn that in, and the next time it's 18 months later, and so you skipped a year of tax form, and it's frustrating.
Well, and that's a very good point. Is you need to keep a copy of everything. And if you happen to go into the office and hand deliver it, ask them for a copy, date stamped, because they date stamp everything with their logo and their date stamp on it. And then you have a copy, because stuff has mysteriously disappeared. And that, they really try to do a lot of stuff electronically, and who knows what happens when that stuff crashes, because we know how computers and computer systems are. But they're really, everything's going electronically. But it's always good to keep that, and as Warren was saying, you can transfer a lot of that stuff over on the next application, and you can, just change the date on it, but you have all that stuff there, so you're not having to rethink all that kind of stuff and look for this Medicaid number and look for this insurance number and all the kind of stuff they require you to put on there. So that's very good. That's another thing that the doctor didn't tell you when he told my son that he was born with a myelomeningocele. He didn't tell me to go buy a 2-drawer file cabinet that I would need. So, and the other thing he didn't tell me about was because I was one of those kind of people, I didn't even go vote. I didn't care who ran for office, because I felt like they did what they wanted to anyway. But he didn't tell me about that either. And so since we were talking about funding, I brought these little books, and everybody gets you one, and they're red to get the complete set of red, white, and blue. And what they talk about is that this is a Congressional Insider Guide to Influencing Disability Policy. It talks about effective strategies, developing coalitions, and general guidelines for to be a disability policy change agent. And so I'm going to leave some of these here, and hopefully that's next month or the month after next that y'all can give these out, because that's very important. Because as Warren was talking about that, because we were talking earlier, I said I remember seeing you at a meeting here not long ago, and we remembered which one it was. Things always change. I mean, like I said, from 30 years ago, things change so much. Sometimes people will say, I have a friend that had a little girl born with spina bifida. Can I have them call you? And they may call me, and I may talk to them. But when they start asking me about medical procedures, medical things change. And they don't even treat the children the same way. When my son was born, they told me that 10 years prior to his birth, the kids that were born with spina bifida died. So, you know, I'm thinking, well, my child's this pioneering person growing up. And then when he turned 13, we went to Indianapolis to a National Spina Bifida conferences. And I saw grandmas and grandpas there with spina bifida, and it just blew my mind because of what a physician had told me had stuck in my head for all those years. And so that's just kind of what happens to us, and things change all the time, and it's important to kind of keep up with the politics that's around Medicaid or kids with special needs, because most kids, you know, fund that program. And even though children with special health care needs, if you looked at the pie chart of all that, it's a very small portion. But I guarantee you that it's a thing that kids and people with disabilities need to get that their health coverage and stuff. The other thing I wanted to share with you is this little book here. I brought this. This has it has everything in here that you would want to know about raising a child with special needs if it's a service that comes from DHS. It has mental health stuff in here. It has the home and community-based waiver. It has preschool services for developmental day treatment clinics. It has EPSDT. It has the Title V program, which we've been talking about. It has early intervention. It has Medicaid. It has the deaf and blind programs in the state. Social Security's in here. So we have bunches of these, and so it's really important that you take one of these and they get into the hands of families. This is a new little book that was just put out a couple of years ago, or about a year and a half ago. When I'm 3, where will I be? And this is for like kids that are transitioning out of the early intervention program. Because you know what's neat about the early intervention program is sometimes you have this child born and you may go to Pediatrics Plus and you're coming in here and you're seeing all these people around you and you get to ask the therapist questions and stuff, and then guess what? You get kind of booted out of that program, and then you're at home and you're kind of like in this isolation period where you're not having contact with all those people like you were seeing. Because you may be coming in and out the doors here and you're seeing Mr. Johnson or Mr. Walker or Miss Walker, and so you're starting to meet people because you're waving at them because you're picking your child up, and then, you know, you're kind of meeting some friends, and then you're not really meeting those when you're out there in the other, you know, because you're dealing with the co-ops or with the public school system, and it's not as friendly type environment as you are when you're either getting your therapy services in home or at a center like Pediatrics Community Connection, Pediatrics Plus. The other thing I have to pitch, one more thing here, is we have a program that's coming up, and I hope Miss Courtney's filled hers out because I'm going to be looking for her there, and I might call her names if she don't come. Because she mentioned all the programs that Community Connections is doing, and I would like to see Community Connections do SIP shops to address the brothers and sisters of the non-disabled child. And this program's coming here, and it costs quite a bit of money to get this guy here, but he's coming here April 20th and 21st. And the registration's been kind of slow. It's been really slow. We're getting kind of nervous about it. And so as of yesterday morning, if you're a parent and you want to come to this, it's no cost. You would have to buy the book to come. There's a book that tells you how to run a SIP shop, but basically a SIP shop is for the brother and sister that have a brother or sister that has a special health care need. It's very, there's lots of people that said that this was a need, so we got him here. And if you come to this and you go through this 2-day facilitator training, you are qualified to start a SIP shop. It's kind of like copyrighted information, so you can say that, and if you looked on the internet, it would say that there was a SIP shop in Conway, Arkansas, because you've been, you know, through this training. I've been through it before, but it was way back in 1999, And basically they just told them that if somebody started one and that I was a part of it, that they could call it SIB shop. Well, golly, I gotta have a life. I can't be doing SIB shop every day. But you can come to this, and it's all over the country. But it's really a good opportunity, and it's very interesting what young kids have to say about their brother or sister. And you know, some feel like they're the people that their mom and dad may pass away, and they're going to have to take care of this brother or sister. Some people don't like them. They think that mother and daddy spends all their time with them, and I'm not getting no attention. And so it's very interesting. I went and observed one here about a year and a half ago in Memphis that they do at a church up there. So send this in if you're interested. If you know somebody, really the ideal situation would be for an adult brother or sister to come and be trained as a facilitator. Because again, that's somebody who's kind of walked in their shoes and they have no. But a social worker, a parent, if wanted to do this, sometimes there's a few parents that I know that are coming that have several siblings, have several children, and they have an interest in this to kind of help address the brothers and sisters' concerns of having a child with special needs. So
this is mainly for like the parents and so forth to be trained.
Well,
what
yeah.
age siblings would be going to?
Okay, they're having a on Saturday. They're looking for siblings between the age of 8 to 13. So if you have a child that's between the age of 8 and 13 that has a brother or sister with special needs, they can sign up because they're actually going to do a hands-on workshop, and they actually want like 20 kids. He asked for 20 kids. On Friday, there's going to be a panel, and they're looking for about 7 adults to be on a panel. And basically, the first day is to kind of get you fired up about SIB shops and see that there's a need, and to get parents fired up so that if somebody starts one, that parents will bring their kids to it. And then the second day, Saturday, is really the demonstration is really for the facilitators, but they encourage you, if you want to be a facilitator, to come both days.
So it's not as appropriate for kids like 3, 4, 5, 6 young siblings.
Well,
It's more so for older siblings.
yes, this is for the sample SIB shop's going to be only for age 8 to 13. Now the one I went to in Memphis, there was kindergartners there.
But I guess this is more of like a training to be able to set these up, and then when you have one, that's where we can bring the 3, 4, 5, and 6 and 8-year-olds to. So this is more of a global training, get it all set
it's
up.
Kind of like a train the trainer type model.
Okay.
But if you know anybody that's interested in that, man, please get them signed up to come and do this. I'm trying to get my daughter to do it. She lives here in Conway, and that's another reason I'd like to see Community Connections do it, because I'd like to get her hooked up with them. Because, you know, I always thought we were doing the right thing, but when she's fixing to graduate from nursing school next month, or actually she's just got to take her finals, and then in 30 days take her nursing test. But she wrote an essay over at ULR, and it was about having a brother with special needs. And when I read that, it just blew me away, because I thought as a parent I was doing all this right stuff, you know. But hey, if your kid's in the hospital and he had surgery, doesn't the whole family go in there at Children's Hospital and see him? But we didn't really prepare her to what she saw through the eyes of a child. And she was scared to death, but which we didn't know, but she didn't let nobody know until she's like 20 years old, that she was scared when she saw her brother with all these tubes coming out of him and laying up there in the hospital bed. But she said that when he looked at her and smiled, she knew he was going to be all right. And that's just that brother and sister kind of thing that parents don't see. And so, you know, they also worry about that losing their brother and sister, you know, even though my son's 30 years old, he has a half sister that's 35. And I saw her not long ago, and she said, I need a hug. And I gave her a hug, and she started crying. And I'm like, you know, what's wrong? And she says, I don't know what I'm going to do when my baby brother passes away, because my son's condition has deteriorated, that he has a syrinx now, and that's like a cyst inside the spine, and they really can't do anything about that. And the more and more they operate on you, the more and more function you lose. And so that was it's an issue with her, and she's 35 years old. And I said, well, that's not today. So we'll deal with that when that day comes, But it's just a thing that a lot of siblings don't understand. And there's all kinds of books out there that you can read about it, that you can read these stories that people have wrote. And another cool thing I think about it is lots of siblings that have a brother or sister, they went in some kind of medical field. That's kind of a history of that. So it's kind of a neat thing. So anyway, I'm going to shut up, and sorry about talking for so long. And let Courtney tell us about the wonderful war of Social Security.
You might be good to add in on some of this. So I'm going to just do a quick recap here of the things I know other than SSI, but I mean, you've hit on some of them. And I mean, there's the early intervention program, birth through 3 years. You can find out information about it by going to the local DHS office. That's, their social worker that does that covers therapies and things 0 to 3. So that's usually mostly, therapy clinics, doctor's appointments, medical things they have going on. Then Medicaid and its umbrella, there's the waiver program that Roddy talked about that has the big waiting list, and then there's TEFRA. We have TEFRA applications with a little bit of a description here on the table. I mean, I don't know if any of you are not on it. That is what we have for my son Alex, because essentially if you have the medical need, which is proven, anyone is eligible to get it because it is a sliding scale. But the application for TEFRA and how to send it in and everything, there are packets on the table should you need or want that, and it has been a big blessing. And then I don't know a lot about, I know there's the Our Kids A and Our Kids B, or medical care. I'm more familiar with waiver, but one I didn't know anything about was SSI. So I went to the Social Security Administration office and had a little training. Now there are a lot of details in that. If you make this, you're eligible, this you're not. But here was my best encompassing overview. And so, yes, very interesting. Okay, well, first of all, for qualifications, they state you have to have a mental or physical condition resulting in severe lack of functioning, day-to-day functioning, that is supposed to last at least 12 months or could result in death. And so they talked to us, really interesting. They said they've had people apply because their child broke a leg.
That almost sounds.
Yes.
Those are on page 39.
Good. 39 in the book is going to be more eloquent. Yeah, I'll look at that and I'll just give my overview bullet points.
That almost sounds like the same verbiage for the state form to fill out for your state taxes to get the disability credit.
Yeah, I haven't really looked at that very well, but that's kind of what they say is the qualification. You last 12 months and, be severe enough that mental or physically results in the lack of functioning. It is kind of a sliding scale based on what your income level is on how much you get of SSI if you are eligible. The maximum amount right this second is for someone who has the most dire need is $698 per month that is given just in the form of a check. They don't really check in on how you spend it, etc. But the qualifications, I think, get a lot of people, and what Rodney was saying about how month to month what you make is, they went through this. Very first, take aside what you make per month or what you're bringing in or your job whatsoever. The first restriction is you cannot have more than, if you're an individual, not married, individual raising a child, $2,000 and or as a couple, $3,000 in resources or things to your name. Now, it does not include a house. I'll give you one house. And it does not include your vehicle's really interesting. You are able to own one car that they will not count. And then you can, as long as you have a car payment on something else, they don't count that as something that you own. But if you have more than $3,000 in your bank account and you're married, you do not qualify for SSI. If you have stocks or bonds or land or anything else, you don't. But so that's the very first thing is you can't have more resources than $3,000 as a couple or $2,000 as an individual. That's your stocks and vehicle or bank account minus. You can have one card that doesn't count, and it won't count your home. It won't count burial plots or resources for burial. So there you go. Then,
Is that $3,000 coming in a month, like for income, or is that just $3,000?
No, this is not income whatsoever. This is
your
just
account?
you're having resources outside of that.
Retirement account.
Any kind of savings
Yes.
account.
Any of that. So that's where you see that will rule a lot of people out. I mean, in Dorking, but then once it's like, okay, well, we have 6 and we have a car. Then there is a sliding scale. I have a copy of it based on number of kids per household and if you're single or married for what you can bring in a month in pay. And the bare basics, and obviously it's all changed. I put kind of for a 4-person family like $5,000. No, I want to be accurate. Okay, if it's 2 parents that both have a job and you have 2 kids, if you make more than $4,300 a month that you bring in, you will not receive, and they have kind of a range, and the lowest is $2,921. So if you bring in $2,921 a month, if it's 2 parents that live together married, they have 2 children in general, that is the lowest amount where you would get that top amount. So anywhere between $2,921 and $4,317 for that 4-person family, those would receive some form of benefit. If you're at that bottom level, $2,921, you'll get the full $698. If you make the top end, $4,317, you might only get $80 a month, but those are the people that are eligible to get some form of SSI benefit. And so this is the most accurate scale. If you're interested, I can make you a copy.
But do not save any of the money that you earn that month.
But don't keep it in your bank account.
Don't keep it in your bank account, or you will
That's right.
you'll be
You spend it.
disqualified by saving that to plan for the
Yes.
future medical need or something.
It's true, and yes, and so it almost, I don't know, I'm not going to get into politics in my opinion on it. That's what it's not it. But you have to send in monthly pay stubs. Monthly. So that seems like an accounting nightmare in my mind. I mean, I asked how they do it, and they said, no, they require monthly reporting that they do. And they say right now it's only every 12 months that they will do like a full reassessment unless they have to do an investigation of rechecking bank accounts, etc. But
And if the child lived with the grandparents, then it would be the grandparents' income and not the parents' income.
right, it's who has guardianship, I think is what they said.
We'll start taking notes on that.
And the process, they say, if you want to apply, you can go to www.socialsecurity.gov. They have, I guess, put a lot of time and effort into their website, which is helpful for things like your own retirement benefits, because we got an abundance of mouse pads and bookmarks. Please take 1 or 5 with you that have the
They can
website.
send all those, but they don't want to send a person on the weekend.
But they can't do that because that's no budget. But
Overtime.
they said that you can do the website, go to the website, and there is a link for children, and/or you can call. There's an 800 number I can give you, and/or the local office. And the one in this area is actually, there's one in Faulkner County that's right off of Dayboard Drive, not so far. You can go in, or you can call the office and request, and then it takes 120 days for them to get their medical conclusion. You fill out the paperwork there in the office with individuals, and then they get documentations from school. Like if your child's school age, they'll kind of to prove the medical need is they'll go to the school, pull any IEPs, pull any data, physician, medical reports. They will get all that, and it's 120 days to get the conclusion. If you pass the medical condition, then they're going to check your income and resources. So they'll do that after the fact.
But it's retroactive, so if you, that 120 days, if you go and you apply and then they approve you, they'll send you like one lump sum for like 3 months or whatever.
Yeah, they didn't mention that, but that's
Yeah,
good.
it's
That's a good point too.
Security is
TEFRA is
TEFRA
retroactive.
yes.
If you're going through the TEFRA
Which is one of the
process.
advantages if you're not sure for these younger kiddos, go ahead and fill it out and get it submitted. If you lose your benefits, like let's say dad, they are having a hard time, so he gets a second job, and so man, that bumps them. They made more than what they could make per month. If you lose it, you can get it back, and they're not going to have to go through all the re-medical documents if you do it within 13 months. So if like you get a second job and 2 months later you lose it and you prove your pay status, they can reinstate it without going through the entire process.
What was that? The perimeter again? 13 months.
13 months is before they'll have to redo a whole new medical conclusion to instate it. And so, you know, kind of this booklet's going to be awesome. You guys all definitely get one of these. But essentially this would be for, you know, individuals that do not have a lot of, you know, resources saved up, stocked up, you know, really need that extra help to meet the basic needs of their, you know, kids. You can have SSI and Medicaid, and I didn't know that at first. I feel like that was one of my own misnomers, but they said, you know, that doesn't necessarily disqualify you, but that was the shorthand version. I don't know if you guys have any specific questions on SSI, but that essentially it was those, what are those qualifications? And, you know, it was a formula.
It's real challenging for the families who are like right on the border, because what happens is those months that you get, if you get paid weekly, those months that you get paid 5 times, or if you get paid every 2 weeks, those couple of months that you get paid 3 times, can actually knock you off of Social Security, and then you have to go on TEFRA. And that's where the big headache comes, because that used to happen to me and my son. And because by the time they get all this processed, and I'm glad to hear her say that they got that 13th month thing now, you know, DHS would drop at me because they said by the time we process this, the month's going to be over and you're going to be back on. But the thing is, what Courtney said earlier, what about if he had to be hospitalized that month and he's not covered? Then that means all those medical bills are mine, or sick, or his monthly, you know, supplies and stuff he needed, and medications for that month. So that's challenging. And to me, I didn't care. You could get all the way up. Maximum was like 6 something.
$6.98 now.
Yeah, $6.98 a month is maximum, all the way down to $1. So it doesn't matter. That can fluctuate how much the check is, but it's the Medicaid is what you need, because that's, you know, and for a lot of adults, it's hard for them to live on $690 something a month. They have to live in subsidized housing and different things like that. So, but the Medicaid's good for kids. It changes at age 18. And this is something to keep in mind too for when your child gets older. If you go now and your child is ineligible because of your income, if your income ever changes due to loss of job, divorce, or any of those things, go back and reapply again. And also, when your child turns 18, your child is eligible because they're considered an adult, so they don't look at your family's income. They may look at how many people live in the home, and their little formula goes by how many people lives in the home, and your child now is an adult, and this is how much rent they would have to pay towards utilities and food and all those kind of things, and they would get a check that way too.
I'm going to just explain really quick the papers and what is out here if you want, and then we will leave the rest of the time if you need to leave, or if you have questions from me, or if you guys want to talk among yourselves. That would be great. Thank you for giving up some of your Saturday morning. I am sorry that Ronnie didn't show up, but I do think if you have any questions, I'll be able to get you in touch with whoever need be. But yes, Rodney told you about, this looks like another packet that has all the info we covered in it. This has the Civ Shops information in it, their newsletter, the where am I going to be when I'm 3.
I didn't talk about that, but you might want to tell them about that. It's got more stuff.
Yep, it's a parent packet. I had one of these a long while ago. Again, another great piece of information that kind of shares all the different, organizations around between Spina Bifida, United Cerebral Palsy. It's Arkansas, right?
Yeah, it's Arkansas. Yeah. There is a few national things in there, but I put some, I y'all were blessed because I stuffed these, and usually I don't stuff them. But when I say I stuff them, it has a vital records guide in there. It's good for record keeping. It has a deal about medical home. It says physician facts. Actually, you can take that and give it to your physician. And if you hear the term medical home, if you look on page 10 in this book, it tells you what a medical home is when we refer to medical home. All these components right here is what the Academy of Pediatrics looks at, what's a medical home. And actually the Title V program does too. Now sometimes when you start talking about medical home with the state of Arkansas, or Medicaid, they want to say, well, we assigned you a primary care physician and that's your medical home. Which in some cases that's kind of true, but in some cases it's not. Because I can tell you that some pediatricians don't have a clue about what spina bifida is. And what I did is I had what I called my snotty nose doctor, which he was a pediatrician, but I only took my son there when my son had allergies going on in the springtime, or he needed to get his shots, or those kind of things. And I chose them because they had after hours, they were open on Saturday, and it was convenient for me. But all the specialists he saw, which was a whole bunch of them, were all at Children's Hospital. And so it was basically me sitting there telling my snotty nose physician, and that was just kind of what I called him. There's nothing bad. It's just that's the only reason I took him there for those type of issues. Other times it would be at Children's Hospital, but and I would have to tell him what all the doctors said the last time: the neurosurgeon, urology, orthopedics, all those kind of things. So in the ideal world, with a medical home, you wouldn't be having to do all that. They would know all about that. Somebody there in the office, either the nurse or whoever does the scheduling, would have resources for you and be able to tell you those things. So that's what that one packet is. The other one here is like, says family facts. It just tells what families, what a medical home is. There is a Medical Home Arkansas website. There's a little booklet in here about guardianship. There's a watch your words, they affect others. And then there's a little alphabet soup thing here about all the many acronyms that we use in the disability community and the education community. So feel free to take those. These have been around for a while, but these are updated ones. And if you know you have an updated one, you'll have a picture like this right here in it. That little girl.